Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Pasteurization. I am Pastor John, and I am so happy that you've decided to take a moment and visit my channel. This is a place where I just sort of reflect on some current events and briefly maybe tie them in with a Bible quote or two, and just sort of give you an insight into something that you may not have thought of before. So, today is Cinco de Mayo 2020, and we are in the midst of our COVID social distancing. And so many traditional celebrations of Cinco de Mayo are curtailed this year, namely going to bars, having Mexican beer and margaritas, and maybe some tacos, and especially since this year Cinco de Mayo falls on something called Taco Tuesday, and many people are upset at that. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to just kind of clarify what Cinco de Mayo is besides a drinking holiday. Cinco de Mayo is not Mexican Independence Day. It celebrates a battle. It's called the Battle of Puebla, and it doesn't have anything to do with Mexican independence. There's Mexican independence that started in 1810, and then there was a Mexican Revolution that was in 1910, and this happened in between in 1862. So on May 5th, 1862, a Mexican army battled against the French in a city called Puebla, and the French were defeated, even though the French were better equipped and they were much larger than the Mexican forces that were fighting them. And so this was a great victory. Now, unfortunately, this was just the battle. The French managed to get a foothold in Mexico and set up a puppet emperor, Emperor Maximilian, who was put in place by Napoleon III of France. And so this Battle of Puebla, though, was kind of a wake-up call to France that this wasn't going to be very easy to do, because they thought they could just go into Mexico and roll over the army, and there was much resistance to that. So people think, oh, well, this is a Mexican holiday, and if I go to Mexico, it'll be a big celebration. I'd love to be in Mexico on Cinco de Mayo. It's not. I was actually in Mexico for Cinco de Mayo maybe back in like 1984, and there is not a huge celebration, except maybe if you're in the city of Puebla. It is a commemoration. People remember Cinco de Mayo, but it's not a big celebration. I jokingly say, it's kind of like Arbor Day, where, people remember, or maybe not, or Flag Day, that it's Arbor Day or Flag Day, but there aren't like big, celebrations and parades and stuff like that. That's reserved for September 16th, the 16 de septiembre, which is Mexican Independence Day, and there are huge celebrations throughout the country with that, fireworks and everything. But an important thing happened in 1862. By like May 26th or May 27th, some people in California, some of the Mexican community that was in California, celebrated. They celebrated this big Mexican victory. And California became a state in 1850. And so even though it was part of the United States, the Mexican population celebrated. And it was the pro-union people in California, because already the United States in 1862 was already engaged in the Civil War. And so the pro-union people in California celebrated this victory because it foiled the French, for the moment, of taking over Mexico and then possibly helping the Confederacy separate from the Union. Now, the Confederacy had been courting European powers to help support them because hopefully there were plans that the Confederacy had succeeded. They would have been separate and they would have been able to either take over Mexico or trade with Mexico, and Europe would be able to support them. And so the idea of a friendly European power in Mexico was very, very appealing. And it also would impact the Civil War because the Confederates now would have support of France against the Union. So the Battle of Puebla helped drain French funds away from the Confederacy and actually challenged French authority. And so the people who were pro-Union in California were so happy that the Mexican people defeated this army at Puebla. And so this is what the celebration is rooted in. And so by the next year in 1863, people were already commemorating this great battle. Benito Juarez, who eventually became president of Mexico after the French were thrown out and Maximilian was executed, was a great admirer of Abraham Lincoln. And so there are many ties to this celebration that are American, that are United States, as they say, estadounense. And so it is a celebration that is rooted in the United States and has very, very tight connections. These were celebrated regionally in California, mostly in Texas, throughout the Southwest. Mexican communities in the Midwest would commemorate it. But in the 1960s, Chicano activists and Chicano culture students really picked up on Cinco de Mayo as a way to highlight Mexican contributions into United States society. And so it really built up. And then once the beer companies started getting whiffs that, oh, here's a possible tie-in for a celebration like St. Patrick's Day, you're able to turn it into this major beer festival and margaritas and Taco Tuesdays and all that. If you ever see skeletons associated with Cinco de Mayo, no. Skeletons and that whole skeleton culture is not just symbolic of Mexico. It is it's part of Dia de los Muertos on November 2nd, and so try not to confuse those two together. So I have an insight because this year what I've found with Cinco de Mayo and its ties into liberation are I've been reading some appeals to, just as the Mexican army overthrew the French at Puebla, a few American patriots need to be overthrowing these tyrannical governors who are trying to suppress our liberty and tell us to socially distance and to quarantine ourselves because it's an invasion of our liberty. And this is a total perversion of what Cinco de Mayo is all about. Cinco de Mayo is about an invading force trying to manipulate situations to defeat a people. It is about a celebration of unity. The people in California were trying to celebrate the Union and the preservation of the Union and not discord and the separatism of states, supposed states' rights in the Confederacy and the culture of enslavement. And so this idea that Cinco de Mayo is a rallying call for our liberty and for reopening and for putting people in danger because of this virus is misguided, and it's manipulative, it's racist, and it's also I don't know, I think it borders on evil. And so I have an insight. Now, this quote I'm going to use has to do mostly with guidelines about sexual conduct, but I think these words can also appeal to where we are right now. So this comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, and it's the New International Version, and it says, I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. And that means that we need to act in love. We need to not let our liberty and our rights and our choices as to what we can do be governed by selfishness. We need to be able to consider, to use prudence, judgment, and wisdom, to love our neighbor, and to be able to act Christ-like, to act in love and compassion for other people. And ultimately, it's not about me putting myself at risk or me dying. It's about other people. It's about putting others at risk. It's about overburdening our hospitals and our medical staff, our nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists, our ambulance drivers and firemen, even policemen. And so, even though I have the right to do anything, I will not be mastered by anything. And so, this is my message for today. And try and celebrate Cinco de Mayo in an honoring way. If you want to grab a beer, you can even grab a Corona if you want. Then go ahead and do so. Remember, though, to socially distance and to be responsible. That's the main thing. And just celebrate this American holiday, and celebrate Chicano culture, contributions of Mexicans, and I don't know, just be well, be safe, be a blessing. Feliz Cinco de Mayo. I'm Pastor John. If you like my message, go ahead and click like or subscribe to my channel, and I will see you later. Thank you.